Disheveled sparrow. 2 days before the performance, Mother took out a small bouquet of glass flowers from the chest. It was given to her by Masha's father. He was a sailor and brought a bouquet from a distant country.
That's what you've been waiting for.
Mother whispered. But Masha did not understand her.
Waiting for what?
She asked. And then Mother said that, leaving for a distant Kamchatka, Dad told her.
Sometimes you will dance Cinderella for the first time, pin a bouquet to the dress. Then I will know that you remember me.
Mom put a glass bouquet on the table and told Masha not to dare to touch it even with her little finger, because it was very fragile. In the evening, Mother, as always, went to the theater to dance. The glass bouquet laid on the table and gleamed. But Masha did not look back. If you look back, Nanny Petrovna will certainly wake up and send you to sleep. An iron blacksmith on an old clock struck the anvil 8 times. He wanted to strike the 9th, but his hand trembled and froze in the air. It was so quiet that everything seemed to be sleeping around. The house, the garden, and the stone lion that sits at the gate. Only Masha, Heating, and Winter did not sleep. The Heating quietly sang its warm song, and the Winter kept pouring and pouring quiet snow from the sky. It was not clear how such white snow could fall from such a black sky. But even more incomprehensible was the crow. She looked at Masha without blinking and waited for the window to be opened. More than once, as soon as Petrovna and Masha left the room, the crow flew into the window, grabbed the first thing that caught its eye, and fled. She forgot to wipe her paws on the carpet and left wet footprints on the table. Petrovna, returning to the room, clasped her hands and shouted,
"Robber, she dragged something away again."
Most often, the crow dragged sugar, cookies, sausage. A crow lived in a stall that was boarded up for the winter, where ice cream was sold in the summer. The crow was stingy, grumpy. She stuffed her riches with her beak into the cracks so that they would not be plundered by sparrows. Sometimes at night she dreamed that sparrows crept into the stall. Then the crow croaked angrily, and the policeman on the corner looked around in surprise. Several times he approached the stall, peered inside, but it was dark in the stall, and only a broken box was white on the floor. One day, a crow found a small disheveled sparrow named Pashka in a stall. She hit him on the head with her beak and threw him out of the stall. Pashka fell down and rolled his eyes. He pretended to be dead. The crow croaked in the end on the whole sparrow thieves' tribe, and the policeman looked around and went to the stall. Pashka was lying on the snow, dying from pain in his head and only quietly opening his beak.
"Oh, you homeless child,"
said the policeman, took off his mitten, put Pashka in it, and hid the mitten with Pashka in his pocket.
"You are a sparrow of a sad life."
In the morning, Petrovna and Masha went for a walk in the park. The policeman called Masha and asked sternly,
"Do you need a sparrow, young lady, for upbringing?"
Masha replied that she needed a sparrow, and even very much. Then the policeman laughed and pulled out a mitten with Pashka.
"Take it, with a mitten, or he will fly away. You will return the mitten later."
Masha brought Pashka home, smoothed his feathers with a brush, and released. Pashka ate, drank tea from a saucer, then sat on the blacksmith's head. He even began to doze, but the blacksmith swung his hammer and wanted to hit Pashka. Pashka flew off, and the blacksmith, getting angry, hit the anvil 11 times. Pashka spent with Masha the whole day and saw in the evening how an old crow flew into the window and stole a smoked fish head from the table. Since then, Pashka flew to Masha every day, pecked at the crumbs, and thought about how to thank Masha. Once he brought her a frozen horned caterpillar. He found it on a tree in the park, but Masha did not eat the caterpillar, and Petrovna, scolding, threw the caterpillar out of the window. Then Pashka, in spite of the old crow, began to drag stolen things from the stall and bring them back to Masha. Sometimes he made mistakes and dragged other people's things. It must be that the crow stole not only from Masha. That evening Petrovna did not wake up for a long time. Masha was curious to see how the crow squeezes into the room. She climbed into a chair and opened the window. At first, large snow flew into the window and melted on the floor, and then something creaked. The crow entered the room, jumped on the mother's table, looked in the mirror, and ruffled up when she saw the same evil crow there. Then she croaked, furtively grabbed the glassy bouquet, and flew out the window. When mother returned from the theater, she cried for a very long time. And Petrovna said that there was no need to be upset. Maybe they would find this glass bouquet unless, of course, the foolish crow dropped it into the snow. Pashka arrived in the morning. He sat down to rest on the bronze fabulist Krylov, heard a story about a stolen bouquet, frowned and thought. Then, when mother went to the rehearsal, Pashka followed her. He flew from signs to lamp posts, from them to trees, until he reached the theater. In the evening, mother put a festive apron on Masha. Petrovna threw a satin shawl over her shoulders, and for the first time they all went to the theater together. And at that very hour Pashka gathered the sparrows who lived nearby, and they decided to attack the crow stall. First, they teased the crow for 2 hours, hoping that she would get angry and fly out. Then they would all attack her at once. But the crow was experienced, knew sparrow tricks, and did not fly out. Then the sparrows finally gathered their courage and began to squeeze into the stall. There was such a squeak, noise, and fluttering that a crowd gathered at the stall. A policeman came running. He looked into the stall and recoiled. Sparrow down flew all over the stall, and in this fluff it was impossible to make out anything.
Blimey,
The policeman said,
this is hand-to-hand combat according to the charter.
and the performance began in the theater. The tall man waved his pale hand. The strings on the violins and cellos trembled, and under the growing thunder of the orchestra, the heavy velvet curtain floated to the sides. Masha's Sorich ugly sisters, and an evil stepmother, and her mother thin and beautiful, in an old dress.
Cinderella.
She screamed softly and could no longer tear herself away from the stage. There, in a blaze of blue, pink, gold, and moonlight, a palace appeared, and mother, running away from it, lost her glass shoe on the stairs. The music all the time did nothing but mourn and rejoice for Cinderella, as if all these violins, oboes, flutes, and trombones were living good creatures. Even the old ushers, who never watched performances, silently entered the hall and looked at Masha's mother. After all, today the daughter of their deceased comrade danced. The same usher, like them, when the performance ended. The music sang loudly and cheerfully about happiness. All people smiled, and only happy Cinderella had tears in her eyes. At that moment, a small, disheveled sparrow burst into the hall. It was immediately obvious that he had jumped out of a fierce fight. In his beak, a crystalled wig gleamed unbearably. Blinded by hundreds of lights, he circled over the stage and flew up to Cinderella. Cinderella held out her hands to him. Sparrow on the fly threw a small crystal bouquet into her palm, and Cinderella, with trembling hands, pinned it to her dress. The theater lights trembled with applause. Sparrow fluttered under the dome of the hall, sat on the chandelier, and began to clean the feathers disheveled in the fight. And then at home, when the lights went out and late night entered the room and ordered everyone to sleep, Masha asked her mother,
When you pinned the bouquet, did you remember Dad?
Yes,
Mom answered softly.
Why are you crying?
Masha asked.
because I am glad that people like your dad exist in the world.
That's not true.
Masha muttered.
People are laughing of happiness.
From the little one they laugh, and from the big one they cry. Now sleep.
Masha fell asleep. Petrovna also fell asleep. Mom went to the window. Pashka was sleeping on a branch. It was quiet in the world, and only the big snow that fell from the sky added silence. And Mother thought that just like snow, happy dreams and fairy tales fall on people. The end. Thanks for listening and subscribe to the Storyteller channel. See you soon.